3 months after the surgery pinned her hip back together, Wanda Pritchett's two sons had each explained, in their own way and on their own schedule, why they could not come home. The young woman renting the house next door was 21 years old. She did not yet know Wanda's last name. She would learn it the afternoon. She watched Wanda nearly tip sideways, reaching for the mailbox with a walker, and got out of her car in her Dollar General polo to get the mail herself. She handed it through the door. Wanda said, "Thank you." Lou said, "Of course." Then she went to work. That was January. By August, she had a key. Wanda Eleanor Pritchett had carried the mail on the same route in Columbus, Ohio for 31 years. Route 14, the east side of Fenwick, the blocks of Maplewood and Ash, the side streets behind the Dollar Tree on Chester Avenue. She started in 1988 at $11.40 an hour. She retired in 2019 at $28.60. In between, she walked an average of 6 miles a day, 5 days a week, in heat that made the pavement shimmer and cold that cracked the skin around her knuckles by November every year without fail. She wore the same blue uniform until it faded to something closer to gray. She kept a small tube of Vaseline in her left front pocket from October through March for her lips and her hands. She had a route, and she knew it the way you know the back of your own house in the dark. She knew, for instance, that the Hendersons on Maplewood didn't collect their mail on Mondays because Mr. Henderson worked nights and slept until 2. She knew the woman at 1412 Ash Street who lived alone and whose son sent cards from San Diego every other month, and whose daughter sent nothing. She knew this because she had been delivering to 1412 Ash Street for 19 years. And the handwriting on the return addresses did not change, and the absence of certain handwriting was its own kind of information. She did not tell anyone the things she noticed. She just noticed them and kept walking. There were years when the noticing cost her something. In the winter of 2003, a family on the Fenwick stretch started getting overdue notices from the gas company in early December. She had only been delivering to them for 8 months. She did not know their names yet. She put $20 in an envelope, no return address, and dropped it in their box. She did not do it to be thanked. She did it because it was December, and the notices were getting brighter red, and she had $20 she could move. She did things like that 7 or 8 times across 31 years. She kept a rough count in her head, not on paper. It worked out to somewhere between $200 and $300 total, which is not a large number and is not nothing. She retired in April of 2019. The postal station threw her a small party in the break room. A sheet cake from Kroger with blue icing that said, "Congratulations, Wanda," in letters that leaned slightly to the left. A card that 22 people signed, some of which she had to tilt sideways to read. The station manager gave a short speech. He mispronounced her last name once, caught himself, and moved on. She drove home to the house on Fenwick Street, the small tan brick house with the aluminum gutters she had been meaning to replace for 4 years. And she stood in the kitchen and made a cup of Lipton tea and sat at the table and thought, that was 31 years. Under her bed was a fireproof box, gray and metal, the size of a small suitcase, with a combination lock she had set in 1994 and never changed. She had put her documents in it when she bought the house. The deed, her mother's death certificate, her Social Security card, a life insurance policy she kept renewing, because canceling it felt like admitting something she was not ready to admit. She opened the box twice a year to add a document or check on something, and closed it again. In the spring of 2019, after she carried 2 cardboard boxes of office things from her car and stacked them in the spare bedroom, and closed the door, she went to the box, opened it, put some things inside, and did not open it again for 2 years. Nobody called to check on her that week. Her sons did not know she had retired. She had not told them. She figured she would mention it next time they called. She figured they were busy. She mostly did not mind, or she minded in the small private way that you mind things you have decided are not worth saying out loud. Wanda had 2 sons. They had each left Columbus in their own direction at their own speed, and for reasons that made sense at the time and still made sense, which was the part that made it harder to say anything about. Dennis was the older one. He had left at 25 for a job with an energy company in Houston. He had a degree in mechanical engineering and a way of moving through problems that was methodical and forward-facing. He did not look back because looking back, in Dennis's experience, mostly showed you things you could not fix. He had a house in a subdivision outside Houston with a good school district. He called his mother every other Sunday. The calls lasted between 12 and 20 minutes. He always asked if she needed anything. She always said she was fine. He believed her because it was easier to believe her and because the answer had always been fine. Carl was 38. He lived in Charlotte. He had married a woman named Monica 2 years ago, and they had a baby daughter named Ivy, who was 8 months old at the time of the surgery. Monica managed their household with a level of logistical precision that Carl admired and occasionally found tiring. She kept the family calendar. She tracked the budget. She decided when visits were feasible. Carl loved his mother. He called on holidays and birthdays, and sometimes on ordinary nights when something reminded him of her, which happened more than he mentioned to anyone. He had not been to Columbus in 2 years and 4 months. He knew the number because Monica had mentioned it once in passing, and it had lodged in him without dislodging. Neither son had been told to come more. Wanda did not ask for things she did not believe she had earned the right to ask for. That was how she had been raised, and she had never thought to question it. The fall happened in January, the 3rd Tuesday of the month, at 6:50 in the morning. She went out to clear ice from the front steps with a broom handle the way she had done every winter for 20 years, and her left foot went one direction and the rest of her went another. She did not lose consciousness. She sat on the bottom step in the cold, with her right hip radiating something larger than pain, and she waited to see if it would settle, and it did not settle. Her neighbor across the street, a woman named Helen Garber, who had lived there for 11 years and waved at Wanda every morning from her driveway, but had never once come inside, saw her sitting on the steps and came across the street without hesitating and called 911. The hospital kept her 5 days. The surgery was on the 2nd day, a pin in the femoral neck. They told her she would need a walker for 3 months, possibly longer. They told her she could not drive. They told her to think carefully about her living situation going forward. The social worker brought a clipboard with resource lists. Wanda took it and said thank you and set it on the bedside table. She called Dennis from the hospital room that afternoon. He answered on the 2nd ring. His voice shifted into the register he used for things that required concern. He asked the right questions, in order, about the surgery and the timeline and the pain. When she finished, there was a pause and Dennis said, "Mom, I want to be there, I do. But I'm in the middle of a project handoff right now, and I can't disappear. I'm going to get something set up for you. There are services for this. I'll look into it today. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" The pause before the answer was about 2 seconds. 2 seconds was not long. 2 seconds was enough. She called Carl next. Monica answered and passed the phone to Carl. He said, "Oh, Mom, okay, which was the thing he did when he was buying time. The thing is, Ivy's still not sleeping through the night and Monica's running on empty. I don't know how we'd make a trip work right now. Give me a few days and I'll figure something out." "I promise I'll figure something out," she said. "Of course, baby." She said it in her normal voice, which did not change under pressure, which meant the people who loved her had sometimes failed to understand how much pressure there was. Nobody came. A home health aide arranged by Dennis came on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The other 4 days, Wanda was alone in the house on Fenwick Street with a walker and a prescription bottle she could not open with one hand. She tried bracing it between her knees. She tried wedging it under the lip of the counter and twisting. On the 3rd day she called the pharmacy and asked if they could fill it without the child-proof cap. And the pharmacist said yes without any tone about it. And she felt a specific kind of shame she did not name out loud and did not pass on to anyone. The trip from the bedroom to the kitchen took 4 minutes. Making coffee was a project. She knocked over the first cup she poured and stood looking at it, spreading across the floor for a long moment, because cleaning it up was going to cost more energy than she currently had, and she had just woken up. She ate crackers and microwaved soup that first week. She wore the same pair of slip-on shoes for 9 days, because bending down to deal with shoes was a battle she preferred to lose on her own terms rather than first thing in the morning. She did not tell her sons any of this. She had gotten very good, over a long life, at not making her problems sound like a request. Luz Moreno had been living in the rental house next door for 4 months when she first saw Wanda at the mailbox. Luz was 21. She had come from Chihuahua with her parents, Ernesto and Celia Moreno, when she was 3 years old. Ernesto did drywall and framing. Celia cleaned houses 3 days a week and spent the other days cooking and keeping track of things. Luz was their oldest and had been, since she was about 15, the one who translated at appointments and read the important letters out loud and explained what the small print said. She had graduated high school with a 3.4 GPA and a full-time job already lined up. She was working the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift at Dollar General 6 days a week and taking 2 classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at Columbus State. Biology, English composition. She wanted to be a registered nurse. She had wanted it since she was 14, the year her grandmother fell in Chihuahua, and the clinic was 40 minutes away, and the nurse who finally arrived had been so calm in the middle of the emergency that Luz had watched her work and thought, without meaning to think it, I want to be that. The problem was money. Nursing school cost more than she could save at $14.20 an hour after rent and groceries, and the $80 a month she sent home to her grandmother. She had run the numbers 4 different times in 2 years. She was not a person who accepted no easily, but she understood arithmetic. She saw Wanda from her car that Tuesday morning, keys already in her hand, running 4 minutes late for her shift. Wanda was at the end of the front walk, one hand on the walker, leaning toward the mailbox at an angle that looked wrong. Luz got out of the car. She got the mail. She walked it to the door, which Wanda opened after a moment in her housecoat and slippers, and she took it and said, "Thank you, honey." Luz said, "Of course." Then she noticed the skim of ice still on the steps, and she went back to the car and got the ice scraper from the back seat and cleared the steps before she left. She was 6 minutes late to work. She did not think much about it in either direction. The next morning, she brought a bag her mother had packed without being asked. Leftover rice and beans, a plastic bag of oranges, crackers. She knocked. Wanda came to the door slow and looked at the bag and said, "You did not have to do that." Luz said, "My mother always makes extra." Wanda looked at her for a moment. She said, "Well," and took the bag. That was how it started. Luz had no plan. She had a neighbor who could not drive and had ice on her steps, and a mother who cooked in quantities that assumed company. She started going to the store for Wanda twice a week. In March, she noticed the back porch railing was soft in one spot, and she told her father, and Ernesto came over on a Saturday with lumber and fixed it in an afternoon. Celia sat in Wanda's kitchen while the men worked. The 2 women communicated almost entirely through gesture and pointing, and the occasional word that existed in both languages. They understood each other completely. Wanda made lunch for everyone. It was the first full meal she had cooked since the surgery. By spring, Luz had a key. By summer, she was coming by on Thursday evenings after her night class, and Wanda had started cooking on Thursdays. Not because she planned to, but because she found herself planning for Thursday, which was different. They ate at the kitchen table. Wanda drank Lipton. Luz drank whatever Wanda put in front of her. They talked. Luz told her about nursing school, about the admissions counselor who had laid out the first-year costs on a spreadsheet that had made her stomach drop just reading it. Wanda listened without interrupting. She did not offer reassurance. She asked specific questions. How much was the first year? What did financial aid cover? What was the exact gap? Luz gave her the numbers. Wanda said, I see. She poured more tea. Wanda told her about the route, about the family on Fenwick with the gas shutoff notices, the $20 in the anonymous envelope, about the boy she had seen waiting alone at the corner 2 weeks in a row, too early, in the same jacket, and had finally pulled over to ask if he was all right, and he had started crying, and she had walked him to the school office herself and stayed until someone sat down with him, about the woman at 1412 Ash whose son sent cards from San Diego. Luz asked what had happened to the woman. Wanda said she had died in 2015. Her son had flown in for the funeral. The cards stopped coming, and then a letter from an estate attorney arrived at the house, and Wanda had understood. On the kitchen wall, there was a corkboard Wanda had put up in 2004. Over the years, cards had accumulated on it. Christmas cards, thank you notes, some handwritten, some typed. There were at least 40, pinned in overlapping layers. Luz had looked at that board since the first time she came inside. She asked about it on a Thursday evening, in November, when the angle of the light made it look like something deliberate. Who are all those? She said. People on my route, Wanda said. You kept all of them? Wanda looked at the board for a moment. I kept the ones that said something real. There were more in the fireproof box under the bed, ones that had arrived after she retired, forwarded through the station. Ones from people who had tracked her name down and written to the Postal Service and then found another way when the Postal Service did not write back. She had been collecting them for 31 years. She had stopped counting somewhere around 150. Her sons called. Dennis every other Sunday, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 12. Carl on holidays, nobody visited. The seasons changed. Luz cleared the ice in the winter before Wanda was awake. She brought tamales from her mother at Christmas, which Wanda ate 3 of and said were the best thing she had tasted in years, which Celia, who received the report secondhand, received with a quiet and specific satisfaction. In the spring, on a Thursday evening in March, Wanda told Luz she wanted to show her something. She moved slow down the hallway to the bedroom, one hand on the wall, the walker in front of her. Luz walked behind at the same pace. Wanda lowered herself to kneel beside the bed, one hand flat on the mattress for balance, and she pulled the fireproof box from underneath it. She sat on the edge of the bed. She turned the combination. She opened the lid. Inside were letters, bundled in rubber bands, stacked in no particular order, some on cards, some on lined notebook paper, some typed and printed on plain white sheets. She set a bundle on the bed between them. Luz picked up one at random. It was written in pencil on yellow paper in the careful handwriting of someone who did not write letters often. It said, Wanda, I don't know if this will reach you. I found the address for the postal station online. You delivered to our house on Fenwick for years. In December 2003, you put a $20 bill in our box with no return address. I figured it was you because nobody else knew. I want you to know that it paid for our heat that week. My boys are grown now. The older one is in the Army. I think about that $20 more than I think about a lot of things. Thank you. Luz set it down. She picked up another. You noticed Marcus waiting at the corner by himself in 2011, and you stopped and asked him something and walked him in. He's finishing his 2nd year of community college. I wanted you to know that. Another, on a store-bought card. You are the only person on that street who ever said my name like it mattered. Luz read 4. Then she put the last one down on the bed and looked at Wanda. Wanda said, That is what 31 years looked like. Not a party. There was not really a party. There was a cake in the break room. She said it the way you say a fact that stopped having an edge a while ago. Those, she said, and she gestured at the letters. Luz looked at the letters spread on the bed between them. There is something else in there, Wanda said. Luz reached back into the box. Beneath the remaining bundles was a plain white envelope from Fifth Third Bank. She looked at Wanda. Wanda nodded once. Luz opened it. It was a statement, a savings account. The name on the account was Luz Moreno. The opening date was 7 months ago. The same month, Luz had started coming by on Thursday evenings. The balance was $41,500. She'd read the number twice. She put the paper on the bed. She did not speak. Wanda waited. The house was quiet. Outside on Fenwick Street, a car went by slow tires on wet asphalt. Luz said, finally, "Wanda." Wanda said, "I know. I can't." "You already did," Wanda said. "Last January, when you got out of your car and got my mail." She looked at the letters on the bed. "I spent 31 years on those streets learning what it looks like when somebody just shows up without being asked. I know it when I see it." Luz looked at the statement in her hand. She thought about the admissions counselor and the spreadsheet and the gap number she had been carrying for 2 years. She thought about her mother, who cleaned other people's houses and never once framed it as a sacrifice. She thought about the word she had used the first time. Wanda said she did not have to get the mail. Of course. 2 words she had said automatically, without thinking, because what else do you say when someone in front of you needs something and your hands are free? She said it now, quietly, differently than the first time. "Of course." Wanda nodded. That was the whole conversation. Neither of them moved from the bed for a while. The light in the room was fading, and neither of them got up to turn on the lamp. Wanda Pritchett died 14 months later, in May, on a morning that was already warm. She left the house on Fenwick Street, her savings, and the fireproof box to Luz Moreno. She left her sons nothing. Dennis contacted an attorney 6 weeks after the will was filed. His legal argument was undue influence. A young woman his mother had known for less than 2 years should not be permitted to receive what a lifetime of work had produced. His argument was structured and reasonable. It was also coming from a man who had not come through the door of the house on Fenwick Street one single time in the last 26 months of his mother's life. Carl did not join the challenge. He did not explain why, publicly. People close to the family said he and Monica had disagreed about it. Carl had gone quiet the week after the funeral and had not said much since. "Here is what I want to leave you with, and I already know it is going to divide the room." Wanda never told her sons how bad it was. She never said, "I knocked over the coffee and sat on the floor for 20 minutes because I could not get up." She never said, "I am eating crackers because carrying a plate is a problem I have not solved." She just watched who called and who didn't, who came and who didn't, who noticed and who didn't, and she made a decision that was final and could not be undone. Dennis called every other Sunday for 12 to 15 minutes for 2 years and never asked a follow-up question. Carl called on the holidays and sent a baby gift, the Christmas after Ivy was born, but nothing else. Luz showed up every morning that she could and every Thursday evening, and whenever something needed doing, and sometimes just because. But here is the harder version of the question. Wanda set a test without telling anyone they were being tested. Dennis and Carl did not know how much she was struggling because she never let them know. She did not give them the chance to rise to it. She watched them from a distance, decided quietly on her own, and made it permanent. She may have been exactly right. Or she may have issued a judgment about people who would have come if they had understood what coming meant. Is it fair to lose everything because you failed a test you did not know you were taking? Or is that precisely what a test is? Leave your answer below. I want to read them. There is no clean answer here, and the people who are most certain about it are usually the ones who have never had to make the call from the inside. If this story made you think of someone who just shows up without being asked and without keeping score, call them. Not a text. A call. There is a difference, and everyone on the receiving end of that phone has always known the difference. A text is what you send when you want to feel like you did something. A call is what you make when you want the other person to feel like they matter. Your mother knows the difference. The person you are thinking of right now knows the difference. They have known the whole time. Subscribe. I will see you in the next one.